Welcome and welcome back. This is Chris, and the date today is April 18th, year of our Savior Jesus Christ, 2026. And the title of this video is a continuation. It's going to be called The Apple Story Part 3. The Apple Story Part 3. And as I mentioned, and I'm going to put it in the description below, a link to my book that I've just put forth. It's the second edition. This is the first edition. But this describes the war between the children of light and the children of darkness. And there is a war going on, whether you realize it or not, in America and throughout the world. And I think that's important because if you've seen what's happened in Gaza, if you've seen, if you're not just watching, what's that Zionist rag, supposedly representing America and, Christ and all of that. Yes, Fox News. But if you look at internationally, a lot of times the world is a lot more informed than Americans are. And Americans a lot of times have a short memory. But it's been a tremendous amount of carnage and murdering of women and children, unarmed as well, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you look back and you look at our soldiers because they were involved in something and they're like, oh, well, you killed a civilian or whatever. I mean, we as Americans used to have value for life. But when you have the IDF, which is governed from a mindset of you're either a Jew or an animal, that's what they refer to these people are. They refer to them as Amalekites. So it's a religion. And this isn't just Bibi Netanyahu or Milikowski, a Polish Jew, those who claim to be Jews but aren't, but are the synagogue of Satan. They do lie. Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9. That should be a clue, ladies and gentlemen, for the Judeo-Christians out there. But we find that this carnage is what, if you look at what they've done in Gaza, and they kill children for a hobby. Shoot children, Palestinian children, shoot them in the genitalia or shoot them in the head, or they go into people's homes and after they rape, murder, and pillage, then they'll take their stuffed animal or their bike, or Palestinian kids will be, and some of them are Christian, ladies and gentlemen, will be playing with a soccer ball, so they'll take that and, deflate that soccer ball. Do Americans do that? No, Americans were known as, carrying candy bars and stuff. You notice the difference in humanity, right? The Christian Caucasian mindset is different from the satanic Jewish mindset. And unfortunately, we have a lot of Caucasians that have been influenced by Judaism, and they become twofold more the child of hell. They serve Satan double more than a satanic child of Satan. Think about that. But continuing, we learned about Phariseeism. This is what Jesus Christ was condemning. He was condemning the Edomites. He was condemning the Canaanites. He was condemning the Pharisees that have corrupted the priesthood. And that Phariseeism was codified into the Babylonian Talmud. Now, within the Babylonian Talmud, we have the 8 genders in the Talmud, right? And that's what's being taught in the university. You had Matt Walsh, works for Daily Wire, interesting, works for a Christ-hating Jew who's loyal to Israel over America. But he did say something very interesting. He said, he was talking about what is a woman, and you're talking to these, and he's just shredding these people because they're so lost. But why is he having this conversation? Why are we having a conversation where we're so debased, so morally bankrupt, and teaching that to the the next generation about there's more than 2 genders? Where does that come from? Well, it doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from the Talmud. In fact, there's 8 genders in the Talmud. There is a website called Jewish Learning. Judaism has recognized non-binary persons for millennia by Rachel Schneiderman. Jewess feminism coming from Judaism is an androgynous doctrine that blends the masculine and feminine together. If you look at feminism today, right, saying that men and women are equal, that's certainly not true. And I said this to 2 men, Christian men, and they go, well, salvation. I'm like, yeah, I'm not talking about salvation. I'm talking about men and women are different. Physically, spiritually, in our DNA, we're different. And that was a good thing created by God, our creator, Jehovah, Jesus Christ. But continuing, quote, thought non-binary gender was a modern concept? Think again. The ancient Jewish understanding of gender was far more nuanced than many assume. The Talmud, a huge and authoritative compendium of Jewish legal traditions, contains in fact no less than 8 gender designations, including Zakar, male, the Nekava, female, and androgynous, having both male and female characteristics, the Tumtum, lacking sexual characteristics, the Elanit, Hama, identified female at birth, but later naturally developing male characteristics, the Elanit Adam, identified female at birth, but later naturally developing female characteristics through human intervention. That's transgenderism, right? Genitalia mutilation. Saras Hama, identified male at birth, but later naturally developing female characteristics. And then we have the Saras Adam, identified male at birth, but later developing female characteristics through human intervention, right? That's transgenderism, puberty blockers, things like that. So I find that very interesting. Continuing. In fact, not only did rabbis recognize 6 genders that were neither male nor female, they had a tradition that the first being was both Adam, which is Adam Kadmon, Kadmon. Versions of this midrash are found throughout rabbinic literature, including the Talmud, which is the oral Torah. End quote. We have Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar also said, quote, Adam was first created with 2 faces, one male and the other female. As it is stated, you have formed me behind and before and laid your hand upon me. Psalm 139, verse 5. So we find Psalm 139:5, we see a corruption of Scripture. This is what Jesus Christ was condemning. He says, by your traditions, you nullify the commandments of God. Albert Pike, December 29th, 1809 to April 2nd, 1891, was a prominent member of the Freemasons who served as the sovereign grand commander of the Supreme Council, Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction, located 13 blocks north of the White House from 1859 to 1891. He was a Luciferian who stated, quote, he from whom all emanated created Adam Kadmon, consisting of all the world, so that in him should be somewhat from those above, Solve, and somewhat from those below, Coagula. Remember, you have Solve and Coagula up and down, right? And you find that on the Baphomet image in Satanism. You have Solve right here and Coagula pointing down. And you notice that was tattooed on that woman who did the, trying to think of her name, but she did the Harry Potter books, which influenced the younger generation tremendously. Indoctrinating them into Kabbalistic or satanic witchcraft. Baphomet is the transgendered goat, god of Kabbalah. Solve up and Coagula down. Notice the Sabbatic goat is a transgendered chimera in Satanism. This figure is rooted in the occult and Western esoteric traditions. This name first emerged in the 14th century during the trials of the Knights Templar, when the order was accused of heresy for worshiping Baphomet as a demonic idol. The Kabbalah's higher secrets of ritual sodomy, the evil eye, chanting incantations, necromancy, bloody sacrifice, and invoking the fallen angels in service to Lucifer fascinated the French Knights Templar. They realized that the Kabbalah originated in Palestine. The Kabbalah was the key to untold spiritual, magical powers. They cunningly planned bloody crusades to Palestine in order to search for more Kabbalistic and magical artifacts. So yes, Caucasians are also Satan worshipers as well. If you look at the Old Testament, when you look at the king lines, who did right in the sight of God? Of the king lines. Now, this is something probably most Judeo-Christians won't understand, but remember there were 12 tribes of Israel, actually became 13 because Joseph his blessing was transferred to his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, or Manasseh and Ephraim. And so we find that, what was it? Manasseh. Yeah, I think it was Manasseh who actually became the firstborn because Reuben messed up. So that's very interesting, but that doesn't mean anything to Judeo-Christians because they just think that everything's Jewish. That's all they know. And that's very simple, but it's our job as Christians not to be ignorant, not to be retarded. Retarded means that your process of learning is slowed down. And you have a lot of Christians that are just, that's all they need to know is just everything's Jewish. Well, that's wrong, ladies and gentlemen. And we should not be following doctrines of devils. We should be following doctrines of Christ. So continuing, we have the Kabbalah was the key to untold spiritual, magical powers. They cunningly planned bloody crusades to Palestine in order to search for Kabbalistic and magical artifacts. They eventually discovered and looted the Temple of Solomon. Various black magic artifacts were confiscated from the castles owned by the Knights Templar, including silver caskets containing desecrated human heads and skulls. They referred to these heads as Baphomets. Several Knights Templar confessed that the images of Jesus was spat upon and trampled during Templar rituals. This spitting on Christ and Christians is still in practice today by Jews in modern Israel. They spit on Christians, or they walk by Christians, these Orthodox Christians, and they spit on the ground because they hate Jesus Christ and Christians. This satanic tradition is still practiced this day at the lodges of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was headed by Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley could be classified as the father of rock and roll. Ordo Templis Orientis, OTO, literally means Order of the Temple of the East or Order of the Oriental Templars. This was an occult secret society and hermetic magical organization founded at the beginning of the 20th century. After the death of Theodore Roos, the English occultist and Satanist, Aleister Crowley took control of the order. Many Knights Templar bribed their way out of prison and escaped to Scotland and the Mediterranean island of Malta. They first renamed themselves Sovereign Knights of Malta, and then after establishing trade routes to North Africa long before Christopher Columbus, they emerged in Scotland calling themselves Freemasons. That's where you get Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, or the Knights of Malta, right? Knights of Malta, are heavily, they have a tremendous power and influence in America today. All versions of Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, Skull and Bones. Remember, Skull and Bones was the Bush family, right? Herbert Walker Bush. He's the one with all the rabbis in the White House. He's the one who implemented in law the Noahide laws. I think it was in, 1991. And that was named after, and that evolved Rebbe Schneerson as well, which will be talked about in my book as well. Continuing, we have the Palladian Rite of Freemasonry, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the KKK. Ordo Templi Orientis, Aleister Crowley, are derived from the original Kabbalistic rituals of the Knights Templar. All Masonic associations, quote, all Masonic associations owe Kabbalah their secrets and their symbols, end quote. That's by Albert Pike, found in Morals and Dogma, 33rd degree Mason. So we have the second Jewish agenda. We found that there are two Jewish agendas, one of androgyny and the second of extermination. This is all about bringing their Mashiach. Remember, they're under a time constraints, so they're acting in haste. That's why they're continually, the state of Israel, 1948, is a terrorist state from day one, and they wage war against everyone. That's why they're doing this, is because this is all about they're bringing in their Messiah, their Mashiach. So the second Jewish agenda involves extermination of non-Jewish people, specifically the Caucasian race. This is based upon the Kabbalistic doctrine called Tikkun Olam, meaning repairing the world. It is a religious concept in Judaism which refers to various forms of action intended to repair the world and the eradication of idolatry, which is belief in Jesus Christ. That's what the Noahide laws are about, is the eradication, the mass murder of Christians. That's the first law of the Noahide laws, is death to idolaters by decapitation. And that's found in the medical codex, shall we say. It is actually in law today in America, death by decapitation. All right, so what do we find here? And this is also by Beware of the World to Come by Christopher, and that's his last name, right? Beware the World to Come by Christopher Jean, and that's his last name. Quote, according to Kabbalah, when the Jewish metagod Ensof dedicated to create the universe, it first contracted itself to make way for the divine light of its being to enter the newly created Vakas, or Zimzum, and form the objects of creation. The Ensof, that's where your politicians, your American politicians go, and they pay homage at the Wailing Wall with the yarmulke and kiss the wall, like Jared Kushner, who's married to, Trump's daughter? And she was converted to Judaism, and actually Donald Trump was converted to Judaism in 2017. They kept it secret till about 2019. And remember, he's given a speech about, I love you, Christians. You just have to vote this one time. And he goes, I'm not a Christian. He literally does this. I'm not a Christian. He's not a Christian. Trump is a Jew. He's converted to Judaism. So we find these divine light in 10 vessels, the Sephiroth. If you look at the Sephiroth, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, in the Kabbalah, in the religion of Judaism, there's 10 bulbs. And so those were filled with divine light. And to contain it, 7 of these Sephirotic vessels tragically shattered and introduced shards of tohu va-vohu, chaos and void, into creation. The fragmented vessels covered the divine sparks of light in shells of darkness, the kelipot, which need to be purged from the world so that purity and light can fill the world and take the place of the evil shells within the Zimzum, the vacuum which arose when the Ensof contracted itself. This process of removing evil and revealing divine sparks of light, ridding the world of the shells of darkness to leave room for the light, is called Tikkun Olam, which term means the restoration of the world by the descendants of Adam and Eve. The Jews, who are composed of the divine light, Gentiles are shells of darkness which conceal light and clutter the zimzum with their evil presence. In order for the vacuum to be filled with the good of light, and only with divine light, Gentiles must cease to exist, because they are not only evil darkness incarnate, but are shells that conceal and displace the holy light. Darkness must give way to light, and Gentiles who are called the sons of darkness must give way to the Jews, who are styled the sons of light, so that the universe can be restored to its original perfect state of purity and order in the world to come. And human beings and the gods must return to their perfect androgynous state. Gentiles are not only sons of darkness, meaning that Satan created them by sleeping with Eve to bear Cain. They are also daughters of the strange god Satan. And what I call this, end quote, this is called satanic conversion. So we are those shards of the broken Sephiroth bulbs, and we hide the divine light of Jews, and therefore we have to be removed. We have to be eradicated. Gentiles are all non-Jewish humans, shells of darkness that must be destroyed for Tikkun Olam, to repair the world, to restore the world back to its original androgynous state. Other code names used by Jews in reference to Gentiles, which are non-human animals, are Goy, Goyim, Edom, which is America, Esau with a V in there, I don't know what that means, Edomites, Amalek, Amalekites, Palestinians, idol worshippers, Christians. Kabbalists use these code words to describe all non-Jewish humans, right? So, and this is taken from the Kabbalah dictionary under Tikkun Olam. I'll spell that out, ladies and gentlemen, so you can verify this for yourself. You can verify this for yourself if you can read my chicken scratch. Those are K's, by the way. It looks like Olam can be spelled with an M or N. Maybe I'm wrong on there. Maybe that's a typo, but that's how you spell it. Those are K's, by the way. So, Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, this is referring to the Jewish mission to manually set the stage for the Jewish Messiah and the world to come. This mission includes many extreme and radical steps, one of which includes fixing humans, transgenderism, and restoring them to their original androgynous form. This is taken from the Kabbalah dictionary. So transgenderism isn't behind. Islam is not pushing the transgender agenda, but Judaism is, right? And if you remember Bibi Netanyahu or Milikowski, he was walking and the reporters were asking him questions, and he had a book, and he's like, and they go, "What book are you reading?" And he goes, "It's about Rome." And so Judaism hates Rome, and they refer to America as Rome. So when you look at these Judeo-Christians, these Christian Zionists, they really are they're yoking themselves to a satanic sex and death cult, which means they're supporting the eradication of their own progeny. That's what they're yoking themselves to. So you got white Judeo-Christian pastors, and they're married to their white Judeo-Christian wife, and maybe they have 3 kids or 5 kids, and they got grandchildren. They're literally putting their family and their country in danger. And all they can quote is Genesis 12, 1 through 3. So Beware the World to Come by Christopher, pages 10 through 16, says, quote, "The only means that the Jews have to reform the androgynous Godhead of Yahweh and Shekinah is to make human beings androgynous and build the third temple to their gods in Jerusalem." That's the Greater Israel Project, ladies and gentlemen, which is using America, and American soldiers, our boys, are going off and dying for Israel, not for America. Because the gods in heaven mirror what the Jewish people do on earth, Should the Jews once again become androgynous, the gods will also become androgynous, and order will return to heaven and earth. This tikkun, or repair of Shekinah and Yahweh into an androgynous form, also entails the restoration of the Jewish people to Palestine, the reconstruction of the temple, and the extermination of the Gentiles whose souls are evil darkness. Shekinah will not return to Yahweh unless and until the temple, that's the third temple, their bedchamber is rebuilt. And the sixth day, the Jews must work extra hard to ready things for the end times, particularly the last 400 years of the sixth millennium, when the birth pangs of the Messiah, the Shevle Mashiach, begin and become more frequent and more painful, just like a woman's contractions do when she gives birth. The Jews have to be redeemed in this period, and the process has to be especially painful and violent. The Jews are the true terrorist, or the serpent seed. So if you're voting Republican, if you're voting neoconservative, this is what you're voting for. This is what you're yoking yourself to. I know that's a shock. It was a shock to me. Rabbi Yisrael Salenter, 1810 to 1883, Talmudist, ethnicist, so he was about ethnicity and leader, about race, and leader of the Musar movement, reveals, quote, is by a rabbi, the Gentiles have to be completely destroyed in this 400-year period in an ever-increasing and accelerating series of calamities. They will then be able to rest for the next 1,000 years while Gentile slaves perform all the work of the Jews, just as Shabbath Goyim performs all the work of the Jews on the Sabbath. That is, until such time as robotics technology makes Gentile slaves obsolete, unnecessary, redundant, at which point they will be completely exterminated. Man, don't they love us Gentiles so much? They hate us, ladies and gentlemen. They hate us. This is our greatest ally, ladies and gentlemen. Remember the USS Liberty in 1967 when Israel attacked and tried to murder and sink USS Liberty. Well, that American flag was waving. They knew it was American ship, and they intentionally tried to sink it. But God, Jesus Christ, prevented that ship from being sunk. So praise God that they're able to give their testimony today. Praise God. Praise Jesus Christ. That is so we got robotics, right? They want to completely exterminate us. Continuing. Kabbalists had permission to spread the Kabbalah in 1840. That is the starting point of the Laodicean church age. If you're I'm a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christian. I don't mean Protestantism today. Protestantism today is Christian Zionism. It's retarded. But I'm talking about early Protestantism. I'm talking about Puritan, Pilgrim, foundation of America. We believe that the book of Revelation is entirely symbolic. And those are describing church ages, and the Laodicean church age begins in around 1850. You notice that the Laodicean church age begins right around when the Kabbalah was allowed to be made public. And you notice what we have from 1840 or 1850 onwards. We have the feminist movement, which has completely destroyed the Western family. We have the sexual revolution and trying to turn the Western woman into a whore. And that's continued today by Pornhub, which was founded and controlled by Rabbi. OnlyFans, Rabbi as well, making the Western woman degenerate. Making everybody degenerate, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting. So we have the Kabbalah in 1840 That's the starting point of the Laodicean church age, which was a very special year, the 1600 year of the 6th millennium. This was a year that the Zohar predicted that the gates of wisdom would spring forth on earth. Prior to 1840, the study of the Kabbalah was a closed book to all but the initiated. End quote. So we find that estimates suggest that over 100 million people have died as a result of communistic regimes, including through mass killings, famines, and political repression. This figure is often cited in discussions about the impact of Judeo-Communism throughout the 20th century. So you find that through the 20th century. So actually Hitler prevented this Judaic communism from coming forth and mass murdering all white Christians of Europe. He stopped it. We've been told a lie, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing. Oh, we're on, that completed the first chapter of Know Thy Enemy and the book Apple Story. Know Thy Enemy, Part 2. The Jewish extermination agenda continued. The Zohar prophecy of Yesod, quote, and after 600 years of the 6,000, there will be opened the gates of wisdom above and the fountains of wisdom below, and the world will make preparation on the 6th day of the week when the sun is about to set. That's 666, ladies and gentlemen. Is this Christian, ladies and gentlemen? Is this what Christians, is this what you want to yoke yourself to? I mean, it's interesting to see that you have people that will go, well, they're God's chosen people, so therefore, no matter what they do, because they're God's chosen people, we just have to stand behind that. Well, I would like to know anywhere in the Bible where God just blessed his people if they disobeyed Jehovah. If you can find that, I'd like to know. Because when you had the nation of Israel, composed of 13 tribes, when they disobeyed God's law, God finally split it into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom had a king line, and I believe that began with Jeroboam, and there was 19 kings of the northern house of Israel. How many kings did right in the sight of God? None. So was it just, hey, they're God's chosen people, they can just worship Baal and just disobey God's law, and they got this hall pass to do anything they wanted? No. God finally got so disgusted with them that they brought in the Assyrians, the Assyrian captivity, which came down and took the 10 tribes and also the other 2 tribes, except Jerusalem. They didn't take. So then they took them into captivity. And that's where they dispersed through the Caucasus Mountains, and that's why we're called Caucasians today. And the migrations are very interesting. This is all well documented, ladies and gentlemen. All well documented. I'm not inventing anything. But today in this Laodicean church age, the church is still ignorant. They still can't identify who true Israel is. So they end up yoking themselves to those who claim to be Jews, but do lie and are the synagogue of Satan. This is Satanism, ladies and gentlemen. Beware of the world to come. Continuing, Kabbalists dread peace between Islam and Christendom and have been agitating for war, right? We have Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Libya, Sudan, Lebanon, and finally Iran. Let's not forget that, ladies and gentlemen. We invaded a country and caused the death of 1 million people, 1 million civilians, men, women, and children. The American military, and we lost sons and daughters in that war based upon intel from Bibi Netanyahu. We should never forget that. Never forget. Muslims and Christians have a common enemy who fears that should Christendom and Islam ever unite to defeat those Jewish forces who wish them both dead, the Jews will be defeated and their planned utopian world to come will be lost forever. Though Jews have historically at times sided with Christians against Muslims and Muslims against Christians, wherever it is good for the Jews, and often pitted them against one another. The Zohar 3:282a expresses an extremely negative view of both Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad. In 1844, soon after the fountains of wisdom were first opened, in 1840, that's when the Kabbalah became public, Benjamin Disraeli, who was to become the first Jewish Prime Minister of England, revealed the fact that there would soon be a tidal wave of revolution across Europe, which would be instigated by Jews. Disraeli knew at least 4 years in advance that the Marxist revolutions of 1848, that's international Jewry, ladies and gentlemen, were about to happen, and who was leading them. Benjamin Disraeli knew these things 4 years before Karl Marx published the Communist Manifesto. Disraeli disclosed these plans in his book, Coningsby, or The New Generation, page 20. Communists grant the state of power to raise children and force women to work, feminism, thereby destroying the family. Communism is another Kabbalistic extermination agenda. It is also a dysgenic agenda which genocides the hated bourgeoisie, the most successful members of the Gentile society, while often replacing them with a privileged ruling Jewish elite. It breeds the worst with the best to breed the best out of existence. Lenin and Trotsky passed around the brightest, most promising young women among the lowest and most degenerate Bolshevik soldiers and criminals. Many of the Bolshevik rapists and genocidal mass murderers were Chinese, whom the Jews imported to assist them in the slaughter of 30 million Eastern Europeans by 1923. The Jews and their gods eagerly await the kingdom of the world to come, New World Order, and the restoration of androgyny, Adam Kadmon. Just as the Amalekite Gentiles must be exterminated, the Jews ingathered and the temple rebuilt in order for Shekinah to again cleave to Yahweh and the androgynous Godhead, so too must Jews return to the androgynous state of Adam for the Godhead to be restored to its androgynous form. The transhumanist movement and the post-genderists seek to use the technologies of gene manipulation and cloning to create androgynous and immortal post-humans who are supposedly created in the original form of Adam before Eve was separated out from Adam and before humanity was cursed with death and childbirth. End quote. In Kabbalah, before creation began, all that existed was God's infinite light. The first stage of creation began when God contracted his infinite light to create the vacuum. Then a ray of divine light penetrated the vacuum, and the persona of Adam Kadmon, see figure to the left, you'll be able to see a picture of Adam Kadmon in color form, was projected into the vacuum. The first stage of Adam Kadmon was in the form of 10 concentric circles, igulim, which emanated from the ray. The ray of light was then enclosed by the anthropomorphic form of Adam Kadmon, or Yashur, which is a realm of infinite divine light without vessels, constrained by its potential to create future existence. LGBTQ is an acronym that stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, representing an androgynous movement of diverse Talmudic genders that have evolved over time as society's indoctrination of these identities has grown due to Kabbalism. The origins of Judaic androgyny trace back to ancient civilizations, more specifically to the serpent in the Garden of Eden. the LGBTQ is part of both the Jewish agendas of androgyny and extermination. Esau is the acknowledged name of the Gentiles among Jews, and they often refer to Gentiles as Esau or Amalek when they speak to fellow Jews about exterminating or otherwise harming Gentiles. Esau is used as a form of code word for Gentile, which Jews often use to keep their intentions hidden from the Gentiles. Netanyahu refers to America as Esau, America as Rome. That's Netanyahu. End quote. The Kabbalah's code names for all non-Jews today, which are to be destroyed: Amalek, Amalekites, Esau with a V as in Victor, Edom, Edomites, Goyim, Gentiles, Rome, and idol worshippers, which are Jesus Christ Christians. These names above include every other race and religion besides Jews/Judaism on earth, especially Caucasians. Let's just quote a few rabbis and we'll wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. Kabbalist Rabbi Itzhak Shapira, quote, "The day of the great and terrible day of the Lord will come out of a place called Edom, and he will crush Edom." I'm just a broadcaster here. In Jewish understanding, Esau is really talking about Christianity, end quote. So Edom equals Christianity. Interesting. The seed of the serpent inverts scripture, thus producing satanic inversion. Jewish rabbi, quote, "Amalek attacked the Jews. We should never forget this. God commanded Moses that they should annihilate Amalek. And this battle between Amalek, good and evil, goes from generation to generation because Amalek is darkness to godliness and holiness. Everything the Jewish nation stands for, humility, godliness, light, they are darkness. And you are commanded to destroy them because Amalek is not only a physical nation, it is a spiritual energy, a negative force of darkness," end quote. Now, the editor, I put this in here, that's me. The editor personally watched and transcribed what this rabbi said on video, but does not know his name. We have Kabbalist Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi, quote, "From the Torah, one of the 613 commandments is to remember to erase the nation of Amalek, the memory of them, not only to physically erase them from the face of the earth, anything that reminds us about them, to erase it from the face of the earth. Hashim say, don't have mercy on the children, kill all their children also. In 10 years, these children will attack you on the way. You kill all men and all women, even babies that breastfeed. Amazing! Exclamation point. Don't leave any memory of this filthy nation, end quote. That's what they think of Americans, ladies and gentlemen. If they could do that to Americans like they did it to the Palestinians, who they refer to as Amalekites, that's what they'll do here. Rabbi Yaron Reuven, quote, "Why are the Goyim idol worshippers? Their natural state is being impure. God's natural state, Goy's natural state is impurity," end quote. Jewish rabbi, "The name of Amalek, do not forget. We assume an enemy of Israel. Every anti-Semite stems from the seed of Amalek," end quote. The editor, that's me, personally watched and transcribed what this rabbi said on video, but does not know his name. Kabbalist Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi, quote, "This is what Hashim say. Nature of this nation, Amalek, it's not only the German, most of the European countries. That is where Amalek is." Now remember, Mark Levin also said that anti-Semitism is in the DNA of the European race or Caucasian race. Mark Levin hates white people. specifically white Christians. Jewish rabbi, quote, blotting out the name of Amalek is a military command, literally to destroy Amalek. Now facing today's Amalek, we are reminded that the Torah calls us not to just escape, but to extirpate Amalek. Now, extirpate can be defined as to destroy completely, wipe out, exterminate. So with them mass murdering and exterminating the Palestinian, which some of them are Christian as well, they're just doing what their God commands, Ensof or Lucifer. We are commanded to do real battle against it, end quote. Now, what's interesting, as I was listening to one rabbi, he says, if you're walking down and he's pointing to a Christian church and they're in there and they're worshiping Jesus Christ, they're idol worshipers. So he goes, I'm lawful. I'm in operating under the law of God to go in there and kill all those people. Judeo-Christian, political Zionists, that's what you're yoking yourself with. Kabbalist Rabbi Chaim Moshe Bergstein, he's the director of Shabbat Lubavitch of Farmington Hills, Michigan, states, right? He's part of the Shabbat Lubavitch, which is a rabbinic ethnicity, that where you get Rebbe Schneerson comes from that line as well, quotes, someone of the Jewish forces will take you out. This guy's in America, Michigan. He goes, someone of the Jewish forces will take you out, just like they take out hundreds of Muslim criminals. Hundreds of jihadists each year. They will take you out as well. This is threatening to kill Christian Americans, specifically patriots. Interesting. So we're at a war, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a war. But tomorrow you're going to have a lot of these blind, ignorant Judeo-Christians going to meet in their mega churches, totally clueless to this 6,000-year war. And understand that they're really not worried about the Negroid race. They're worried about the Caucasoid race. Because the Caucasoid race, although is originally pagan, converted, and we have nations that were converted to Christianity, we're just in their way, ladies and gentlemen. We're in their way, so they have to remove us to bring in their Mashiach, to bring in their Messiah. So I ask you today, who will you serve? Are you going to serve Ensof? Are you going to serve Lucifer? As Joshua commanded, are you going to serve Baal? Are you going to be like 1 foot in the camp of Christianity and 1 foot in the camp of neoconservatism? With glee sending off young white American Christians by majority to die in never-ending wars for a foreign country? You going to be a Laodicean Christian? Are you going to have both feet in the camp of Christ and be the followers of Jesus, which were first called Christians, not Judeo-Christians, in Acts 11:26? Well, the choice is up to you, ladies and gentlemen. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, and we will speak against a religion that is diametrically opposed to Christianity. There is no syncretism in Christianity, ladies and gentlemen. We are not for Judeo-Christianity, but we are for Christianity, which is really the foundations of America. God bless you, and we'll pick this up, Lord willing, in the next video. Thank you. Bye.